Good evening, everyone. Today is Monday, September 16th, and it is a Browns Monday Night Football game. We're shortly after our start time of 7:30, and if you'll all join me in rising for our Pledge of Allegiance. Who took our flag? That was a practical joke, apparently. Our flag is missing.
Wow. There's cameras in here, right?
Actually, that's not a bad idea. Vice President Anderson, are we able to find a flag? Apologies for the unexpected lack of flag.
It's fun watching it.
Hopefully this isn't happening at the Browns game.
We're getting the vicious circle of...
Okay. Well, since we're all, there we go. Very promising. Okay, great. All right, if you'll all join me in pledging allegiance to the U.S. and North Carolina flag of your choice, located near the front of the room. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for joining me in that unconventional pledge of allegiance. If you'll now please join me in a moment of silence, this should go more smoothly. Thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Anderson.
Here.
Bullock. Here. George. Here. Litton.
Here.
O'Leary.
Here.
Malley. Rader.
Here.
Thank you.
Reading and disposal of the minutes of the regular meeting of council held September 3rd, 2019.
Move to dispose without the necessity of a reading.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to dispose of the minutes without reading? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? There being none, that motion passes.
Item 1, Public Works Committee report regarding meeting held September 9th, 2019.
Thank you. Public Works Chairman Rader.
Yes, so we had a Public Works meeting last week, and during that meeting, actually, I'm going to go ahead and move to defer this, if that's okay. Yeah.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file? I'm sorry, to defer, rather. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 2, Resolution 908719, a resolution to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission State Capital Improvement Program, Local Transportation Improvement Program, or any other appropriate Ohio Public Works Commission program that the Summit Outfall Replacement Project qualifies for, and to execute contracts as required.
Thank you. With the understanding that the report has been deferred, Chairman Rader, was there a recommendation of the committee on this particular item?
Yes, there was, Mr. President. We did recommend this for adoption tonight.
Okay, thank you. With that information, move to adopt.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to adopt? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 3, Substitute Ordinance 2319, an ordinance enacting Chapter 161 Tree Advisory and Education Board of the Lakewood Codified Ordinances to establish a permanent tree advisory and education board for the purpose of collaborating with city officials regarding its urban tree policies and practices, promoting the city's tree programs, and educating residents regarding responsible tree stewardship and the benefits of tree planting on private property.
Thank you. I'll again defer to Chairman Rader as to whether there was any action taken or recommendation made.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. We had the communication last meeting, so I was a little bit confused. I apologize about that. So yes, we did recommend that we adopt this at this meeting, and we did defer it to this meeting so that we would have an additional reading on the ordinance that this of this ordinance. And then we did also recommend the adoption of the resolution to commemorate the 2014 Tree Task Force recommendations. So yeah, this will be the third reading, and we did recommend this for adoption today, and look forward to that vote, as well as we do have some applicants for the, and I think we'll have a resolution a little bit later that will highlight the, should this pass, highlight the fact that we do have opened this up for people to submit applications, and we do have several of those applications here, and we'll go ahead and get to that when we get to it. But yeah, we did recommend this for adoption, and I would appreciate affirmative votes from my colleagues, should they so decide.
Thank you. With respect to the applications, have those been shared with our clerk or council broadly yet? Okay, thanks. Then I will move to substitute.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to substitute?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just for the record, this version that you are moving to substitute for the original corrects chapter number. It's not any longer Chapter 161, and the clerk can confirm that. It's a different chapter number because 161 is already reserved in our code.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification. Any additional discussion on the motion to substitute? Hearing none. Madam Clerk?
Anderson?
Yes.
Bullock?
Yes.
George? Litton?
Yes.
O'Leary?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Rader?
Yes.
That motion passes. Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to adopt ordinance 23-19 as substituted?
Mr. President,
Yes, Councilman Bullock.
thanks. I want to compliment the leadership of the Public Works Chair, Mr. Rader, for his focus on these matters, which are not only important, but they've been discussed for a number of years, and we've certainly been active as a council on tree matters, but there were a list of items, and he's systematically made sure we've worked through all of them and checked them off the list. So I intend to vote for this ordinance tonight, and I think this will achieve nearly every one or every outstanding recommendation from the task force of a number of years ago. So thank you.
Thank you. Any additional discussion on the motion to adopt? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, we need to do a roll call on the adoption vote, correct? Thank you.
Anderson?
Yes.
Bullock?
Yes.
George? Yes. Litton?
Yes.
O'Leary?
Yes,
O'Malley?
Yes.
Rader?
Yes.
that motion passes and the ordinance is adopted.
Item 4, substitute resolution 908119, a resolution to endorse the principles for tree care and the urban forestry management goals recommended by the 2013-2014 Lakewood Tree Task Force and City Forestry Manager.
Thank you. I'll note at the outset that we do have public comment on this item. That being said, I understand this has also been recommended for adoption this evening through the Public Works Committee. So I will move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just a point of order. This is a substitute version, so I would recommend making a roll call vote to substitute first.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I will then so move to substitute this version of Resolution 9081-19.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to substitute? Hearing none. Madam Clerk?
Anderson?
Yes.
Bullock?
Yes.
George? Yes. Litton?
Yes.
O'Leary?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Rader?
Yes.
That motion passes. And what I would now like to do, if there's no objection, is to open the floor to our agenda item comment on this item, which is Ms. Marianne Quaisbarth, USIAC. I'm sorry, who is, rather.
Good evening, I'm Marianne Quaisbarth, USIAC 1057 Abbyshire Avenue, Lakewood. I'm a former Tree Task Force member as well as former chair of Keep Lakewood Beautiful Tree Committee and currently a board member of Keep Lakewood Beautiful. I just wanted to acknowledge and thank past council persons who are here and some who are not, and as well as all those present who have worked on passing the agenda item previous and this one. It is very important. Trees are not only aesthetic, but they are an important part of our infrastructure, and it is something we need to take care of since many of our trees live 100 years. We need to have these policies and practices in place for not only us to enjoy, but those after us. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would personally very much echo those sentiments. I'm partial to the mayor's turn of phrase, which I don't know is original to the mayor, but the old adage that the best time to plant a tree is what, Mayor? 20 years ago, 30 years ago?
Yeah, the second best time is today, the best
Right.
time was 20 years ago.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's not original to me.
Right. Nonetheless, true as ever. Is there any additional comment from council on the motion to adopt as substituted?
Mr. President.
Yes, Councilman Rader.
I think it's worth noting, too, that Tree Forestry Manager Chris Perry and Director Joe Beno were instrumental in helping this process along, and especially Chris Perry spent just a ton of time working through this and working with us in the committee and even outside of committee meetings, working with me. So I just wanted to acknowledge him and also Councilman Bullock for leading this, really, and kicking it off with the resolution to do the private tree side planting, which kind of led to the tree task force discussion, which led to the ordinance. So thank you for that hard work for many years. It's certainly coming together as it's always been coming together, but it's certainly coming together again now, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any additional discussion on substitute resolution 908119? Hearing none. All those in favor, I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the substitute version.
Anderson?
Yes.
Bullock?
Yes.
George? Yes. Litton?
Yes.
O'Leary?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Rader?
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you.
Item 5, Public Safety Committee report regarding meeting held September 9th, 2019.
Thank you. Councilman Bullock.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Public Safety Committee met on September 9th and considered two matters. One is a communication from Councilman Litton and myself regarding alternate July 4 parade routes, and the other is the next docket item, Resolution 9080-19. On the communication regarding the potential for alternating July 4 parade routes, we held informal discussion with the members of the administration who were present. Was the fire department leadership. I believe the law department was also there. Yes, they were. Planning department, and so was our community development manager, Melissa Garrett, who's also known as the talent behind the curtain, who makes all of our community events run smoothly and effortlessly, which is actually not easy to do. The consensus on the July 4 parade route, which this year, due to Lake Avenue construction, did not follow the traditional path of starting from the west and coming east to Lakewood Park. Instead, it started from the east, came west, was that it went well, and that there were a couple of small wrinkles for police and fire regarding making sure the fire could move their equipment if needed and have access. And with police closing Nicholson, which is a heavier traffic street at an earlier time probably. And everybody else seemed to have a positive experience. So the informal consensus of the committee seemed to be that the concept of alternating every second year the parade route to share the fun and share the burden of that route is a good idea. Now, there's no formal action contemplated. This is more, I think, a discussion with the new mayor in the new year. But I think the Ward 4 councilman pointed out that accessibility, and Councilman Anderson also, of the walking routes from the Gold Coast and those neighborhoods is improved by having the parade route that we did this year. So I was heartened by that discussion. Second committee item was Resolution 9080-19, which is a proposal to purchase a portion of the Donato's Pizza property for the Fire Station 2 to be able to expand. The reasons behind this were several. First of all, the station was built in the 1920s, expanded in 1989. The station was designed for 15 people, now 21 work there. Vehicles are large, and the space in the garage where the fire truck is kept is very tight. There's also an ambulance kept there. And the key detail is that the turnout gear, the fire coats that the firemen wear, the protective gear, gets coated every time in diesel exhaust. And there's an important and very worthwhile effort in firefighting professionals to reduce cancer exposure, because there's been a noted, there's a higher than there should be incidence of cancer with career firefighters, and we've experienced that in our department. So if we were to expand, we would create more space for the trucks and the ambulance, and importantly, create clean gear storage and washing and maintenance space so that we could invest in the long-term health of our workforce, which we for sure should be doing. Our new acting chief and soon-to-be official and permanent chief also pointed out that if we expand this fire station, there's a public art opportunity on the wall, the new brick wall that would be facing the Donato's Pizza, which I think is a wonderful combination of our city's goals and an opportunity. So at the conclusion of this, the committee voted in favor of recommending adoption to the full council as soon as we are prepared, since we don't have an Exhibit A attached to the present ordinance, to my knowledge. With that, I'll conclude my long-winded oral report. Move to recommend or to receive and file.
Second, any discussion on the motion to receive and file? I would just add personally that I am a huge proponent of the ability to reduce cancer rates among our first responders, and particularly our firefighters and EMTs. And I think that this is a really logical approach to take there. I would also say that I do find, in general, the proposal to alternate parade routes more pragmatic than the alternative proposal to have 2 4th of July parades every year. So I find myself in support of that sentiment as well. Any additional discussion on the motion to receive and file that Public Safety Committee report? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 6, Resolution 908019, a resolution authorizing the mayor and director of law to enter into a purchase agreement with Emerald Light Investments, Ltd., an Ohio limited liability company, owner of the property located at 18100 Detroit Avenue, and to execute all documents necessary to effectuate the purchase and sale according to the terms of that agreement.
Move to adopt.
Second. Oh, we need to defer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we need.
I apologize. Move to defer.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to defer?
Mr. President,
Yes, Vice President Anderson.
when might the administration be prepared to provide an exhibit purchase agreement for council's consideration?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you.
Certainly.
Law Director Butler.
Prior to the next council meeting.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any additional discussion on the motion to defer? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 7, Finance Committee report regarding meeting held September 16, 2019.
Thank you. Finance Chairman O'Malley.
Thanks. I'll be brief. Finance Committee met this evening. We discussed a number of the budget priority items that the council proposed, and got some good feedback from other members of council and the administration, and we'll continue on with the other items at our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that report.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? There being none, that motion passes.
Item 8, Ordinance 2519, an ordinance repealing 90507 animals and enacting a new 90507 animals, which require that all dogs in any park be registered with the county fiscal officer and wear a registration tag.
Thank you. As this is on second reading this evening, I will move to defer.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to defer? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion to defer say aye. Aye. All those opposed? There being none, that motion passes.
Item 9, communication from Council President O'Leary regarding new codification ordinance.
Thank you. I will not read verbatim this communication. However, those who follow council's business closely will recall that every quarter we have an ordinance to codify our work from the previous quarter of the year, which basically means to officially record those amendments to ordinances or new ordinances and publish them as such. There's obviously a new quarter to consider, and I would generally not refer this ordinance to a particular committee, but would rather leave it on the docket for council's general consideration, and we'll have the opportunity to hopefully pass it on third reading. Move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? There being none, that motion passes.
Item 10, ordinance 2619, an ordinance to approve the editing and inclusion of certain ordinances as parts of the various component codes of the codified ordinances and to provide for the publication of such new matter.
Move to defer.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to defer? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? There being none, that motion passes.
Item 11, communication from Councilmember Rader regarding council appointments to the Tree Advisory Education Board.
Thank you. Councilmember Rader.
Thank you, Council President. The following three resolutions are the three appointments council will have to make to the Tree Advisory Education Board. Before you and in your email, you'll have a packet here of some of the applicants. Feel free to look over that, but I'm going to go ahead and recommend that we defer the next three pieces while we review our applicants. And after that, the administration will also have a chance at appointing two members. They've agreed to wait till we appoint, and then they will take the remaining applicants and any applicants that the administration should feel fit and make their appointments once we've selected ours.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file?
Mr. President,
Yes, Councilman Bullock.
once again, I appreciate the prompt work and thorough work of Public Safety Chair, Mr. Rader. The three resolutions will enable council to make appointments, and I see that thanks to the council office, Council Clerk Bach, we've already received 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, more than 10 applicants for the three spots, and maybe we'll share some of the applicants with the mayor's office for 5 spots total. What committee and what process is do you and the committee chair envision for deliberating upon this?
Sure. So I think that in a situation, not to state the obvious, but I think in a situation where we have fewer appointments than council members, we'll obviously have to reach some kind of consensus. I'd be happy to entertain that in a Public Works Committee discussion. If it's the chair's desire, we could certainly meet in a committee of the whole context, or we could discuss on the floor for that matter. I know that we've got, it looks like a fair number of applications in already. You know, it could be unwieldy to discuss on the floor, or there may be broad consensus initially. I've seen both happen. So again, if it's council's committee, or if it's council's desire rather to discuss in committee further, I'm amenable to that in either context. If we think that we might be able to reasonably reach an agreement on the floor at our next meeting or shortly thereafter, we could do that as well.
Sure, Mr. President.
Yes, Councilman Rader.
I'd recommend that we either do this on the floor or a committee of the whole at your discretion, just because I feel like all members should have a say. And I don't think it should be too contentious. I think we'll be able to find 3 members in there. And if there's other process you want to add to that, certainly welcome.
No, I would tend to agree, and I think that without procrastinating, I think that if we are able to determine 1 or 2 on the floor at our next meeting, we can certainly accept that progress and work towards the full complement. So I appreciate that, and would therefore, I guess, lean towards deferring the resolutions. But any additional discussion, I guess, on the motion to receive and file the communication?
Mr. President.
Yes, Councilman Bullock.
I think it's helpful to be able to discuss in committee, especially about appointments of individuals. So my preference is to refer these to committee of the whole and have a 15 or 30-minute committee of the whole meeting. I think we could fit that in the first or second meeting of October if we have our first tree board meeting in October. That's not too slow and too late, is it? So even if it was the second meeting of October, because I know we have a lot of Finance Committee work to do at our next session, we wouldn't be behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, understood. In light of that view, I'm perfectly amenable to having a committee of the whole and having further discussion on it. So I appreciate that. Any additional discussion on the motion to receive and file the communication? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes unanimously.
Item 12, Resolution 909019, a resolution appointing blank to the Tree Advisory and Education Board for a term beginning immediately and ending December 31st, 2020.
Move to refer to committee of the whole.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to refer to committee of the whole? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? There being none opposed, that motion passes.
Item 13, Resolution 909119, a resolution appointing blank to the Tree Advisory and Education Board for a term beginning immediately and ending December 31st, 2020.
Move to refer to committee of the whole.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion to refer to committee of the whole? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes without opposition.
Item 14, Resolution 909219, a resolution appointing blank to the Tree Advisory and Education Board for a term beginning immediately and ending December 31st, 2022.
Move to refer to committee of the whole.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion to refer to committee of the whole? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion also passes.
Item 15, communication from Councilmember Litton regarding affordable housing.
Councilmember Litton.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, by many accounts, and even based on just the sheer development spending in Lakewood, we are in the midst of an economic boom in our city. Many in this room and beyond have worked very hard to put Lakewood into this position, and frankly, I'd love to see that growth continue. This growth, however, can have drawbacks related to affordability. The gateway to becoming a part of our great community could be growing smaller, and if we are to be the diverse community we strive to be, then we ought to seek ways to keep gateways open. I also believe that we ought to not use a stick where we haven't tried the carrot first. There are examples in Cleveland and Columbus of hybrid approaches where there has been housing development or renovation that included both market rate housing and affordable housing. Tremont Point, the Snavely project on 25th Street in Ohio City, and affordable housing strategies being implemented and explored in Columbus are all nearby examples of hybrid approaches to affordable housing or increasing affordable housing. They aren't perfect in the eyes of many and aren't necessarily a cookie-cutter approach for Lakewood, but they offer us an opportunity to see how we can be creative about solving a problem. It seems to me that if a local government is willing to limit its own revenues, it can also set its own terms for how it helps people and how it incentivizes this sort of an approach for owners and for developers. Lakewood ought to explore the options related to new development and renovation that require a certain percentage of units to be deemed and maintained as affordable. At any rate, I'd be very interested in having our administration, specifically our planning department, investigate this sort of an approach with an expectation of a response within a few months. I'd be welcome to that response being discussed within our housing committee or any other committee deemed appropriate by this council. And in my opinion, there's really two basic challenges to adding more affordable housing. That's market forces and there's politics. And I believe we have the ability to work through both using this approach without jeopardizing the growth that we've seen in our city. And I look forward to further discussion. Move to receive and file.
I would second, but I would perhaps add a motion to refer to Housing Committee. Can I have a second?
Please do. Second.
Thank you. A motion's been made and seconded to refer that communication to Housing Committee. Is there any additional discussion on that communication?
Mr. President.
Yes, Vice President Anderson.
As the chair of the Housing Committee, we will obviously commit to having a renewed conversation. This would be a follow-up to the conversation we had in March of this year in regards to the affordable housing strategy proposed by the administration in concert with City Council with specific summaries and action steps. I think there were 7 specific action steps that were identified back in March. So I think it's a good time for us to round back into this conversation and sort of see where things might lie over the last few months, the next few months, and then maybe years down the road. So happy to tee this up for further conversation. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. I would add that from my own perspective, I think that this is an incredibly important conversation. It's a timely conversation. And, you know, one of the most fundamental aspects of Lakewood is that it's a place where everyone can find a home. You know, we certainly would be remiss if we didn't continue that conversation and work constantly towards that end. So I appreciate the communication and look forward to the discussion. Any additional discussion on the motion to refer to housing? Yes, Councilman O'Malley.
I know this is a verbal communication. Could you put it in writing, John? Could we? Okay, I think it's excellent, and I certainly agree with the goal.
I should add that I just basically missed the docket deadline.
Oh, okay. Well, no problem.
Happy to share.
Thank you. Any additional discussion on the motion to refer to Housing Committee? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? There being none opposed, that motion passes.
Item 16, communication from Mayor Summers regarding Cove Church fit analysis.
Thank you. Mayor Summers.
Thank you, members of council, members of the audience. Working group here in City Hall has continued to make progress to understand the strategic options and ramifications regarding the conversion of Cove Church to our new multi-generational community center. We had hoped to have a clear recommendation at this juncture. However, the importance and the scope of the project requires more extensive analysis and strategic review. I know that we all believe that we must take the long-term and second-century view and do this right. However, we have created a foundational understanding that allows us to make broad recommendations to begin the process for ultimate decision-making by the mayor and city council, most likely the next mayor and the next city council. Some of the assumptions we can confidently make today. The existing Office on Aging, youth, and early childhood programs fit well into the existing Cove Church space. Additional space, 2,000 square feet to potentially 5,000 square feet, is available for additional programming while all three existing programs are operating simultaneously. Flexible shared space of approximately 10,000 square foot is available off hours or while only one of the existing programs is operating. All of the space is available for community use in the evenings. Cost assumptions. Rehabilitation costs from three different sources range from $2.8 million to a little over $4 million. Certain contingencies raise these costs and require more analysis. Roof replacement, fire suppression, HVAC energy use, hazardous material abatement, occupancy costs, and foundation repair estimates are among the most pressing. New build estimates range from $6 million to $6.9 million. The comparison costs between new build and adaptive reuse narrows because of the unknown contingencies. Further work is required to address the uncertainty of these contingencies. Financing assumptions are critical as well. $3.5 million exists in the Land Acquisition Fund. Additional millions exist in the Lakewood Hospital Fund. Some community development block grant funding is available. Efforts will be made to seek additional funding from state and foundation sources. We should consider the ramifications of our existing real estate holdings for potential sale. This includes the Community Health Center at 1450 Bell, the 9 houses on Bell and St. Charles, the existing Lothar Center on Northland and Madison, the Hilliard Theater site, and the youth offices on Madison across from Madison Park. It is very important that we use our cash resources to fund this project versus adding debt. The city debt capacity must be reserved for future Clean Water Act compliance. Recommendations and next steps. My hope was to have been further along in our goal to make a clear recommendation to City Council by this date. My preference remains to choose the adaptive reuse of the existing Cove Church space rather than build new. The information we have acquired thus far makes it premature to make such a clear recommendation. However, we do know enough today to begin to seek a design-build partner. This process is lengthy and complex. The process itself will help lessen the uncertainties. At a minimum, we recommend that City Council ultimately approve a resolution by the end of this year, 2019, to send out a request for qualifications that would include, at a minimum, the following: describe the intended project goals and outcomes in as much detail as possible, a project budget, project delivery and design build responsibilities, expertise and related project experience, and decision-making process by the city to select the design-build partner. It is possible that our analysis and discussions may allow us to accelerate our timeline to send out the RFQ and recommend a preferred design-build partner by the end of this year. However, this project is very important and timely, and we must take the appropriate time to make the best decision. I ask City Council to refer this letter to an appropriate committee for our ongoing discussion so that we can jointly consider all the decisions that lie ahead on this important matter. Respectfully submitted.
Thank you. That's obviously, as you referenced, a very important topic with a lot to digest there. I look forward to a more detailed discussion on all those points. It strikes me that this could be appropriate for, in particular, the Human Services Committee or Committee of the Whole. I'm open to either one, or if there's a different suggestion, we could certainly talk about that. But I guess, is there any feedback, at least initially, from my colleagues on a potential committee referral?
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
I think
Councilwoman
I
George.
prefer committee of the whole. I think it's a pretty large topic that we should all be involved in, so that's my preference.
Okay. Then I will move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
A motion's been made. Oh, I'm sorry. Right, there's nothing else attached to this one. So move to refer this communication, rather, to Committee of the Whole.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to refer to Committee of the Whole?
Mr. President.
Yes, Councilman Bullock.
Thank you for the discussion and for the detailed letter. Wanted to ask or comment on a couple points and ask a couple questions about the letter from the mayor, if I could. On financing assumptions, so first of all, I agree with the approach. Thank you for the diligent work and the intended process. I think following an RFQ and a design-build partner is building on successful process we've done a number of times recently. So this all is thorough and good work. On the financing assumptions, I wanted to spend a little time to at least tease some discussions here. There's a lot in here that's good. Number 6 is crucial, and frankly, some of this we may, with the finance chair's permission, talk about in the end of budget year discussions where we're looking at financial reserves and debt capacity and macro budgetary matters. But I agree with number 6. It's very important that we use our cash resources as opposed to encumbering debt. On number 5, which talks about the different assets that we could potentially sell, that's a good reminder, and because I don't always remember off the top of my head what assets we have, and B, there's a lot of complexity to this list because you could potentially sell the Lawther Center and the youth offices, but of course the timing of that is tricky if you're going to move them into Cove Church. The Hilliard Theater site, I want to say on the record, I think it'll be important that the city retain ownership until we have some sense of a future user and have quality control over development of that site. That's worked well for us a number of times, and the Hilliard Theater site could potentially, if developed well, add a transformative effect to that neighborhood. And my instinct is that we want to keep a close hold on that until we have clarity what the private market would want to do with that parcel. The 9 houses on Bell and St. Charles probably ought to be sold, and selling them in a staggered manner, which is at the same time respectful of the tenants that are in there now, could have a appropriate impact, a constructive impact on our home sale market. But maybe that could be programmed. And then finally, the community health center, it seems that's a big asset. It's working well. Before selling a big building like that, I'd want to understand a little more about what we might lose. So those are all worthwhile, important things for us to discuss. I don't know where that discussion belongs, and that's kind of why I'm taking the time now to at least indicate some initial comments. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate those sentiments. I also would add from my own 2 cents that one of the things that strikes me as an important kind of threshold question here is frankly the decision of whether or not to rehab or to build, to scrape and build. And partially the reason I say that is because I think I feel like it's a pretty relevant question as far as any RFP goes, because the areas of expertise involved in a rehab versus a scrape and build are potentially pretty different. And so we might get pretty different responses, I would anticipate, as far as firms that would be interested in a historical rehab project, essentially, with, vastly different interior demands versus a whole new structure. Not necessarily, but I think that there are areas of expertise involved in the former that aren't required in the latter. So definitely looking forward to this discussion, and as I said initially, I think it's very important, and happy to welcome it to Committee of the Whole to the extent that's Council's desire, and that seems to be the case. So any additional discussion on the motion to refer to Committee of the Whole? Hearing none. All those in favor of the referral say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 17, communication from Mayor Summers regarding appointment to Community Relations Advisory Commission.
Thank you, Mayor Summers.
Thank you, President Leary, members of council, members of the audience. I'm very pleased to announce Tracy Greenberg's appointment to the Lakewood Community Relations Advisory Commission, actually. Tracy is with us this evening, and Tracy in particular brings a strong advocacy for and a great deal of knowledge of American for Disabilities Act compliance. And we've had some pretty lively discussions, and we recognize we have a lot of opportunity for improvement. And I'm grateful for her enthusiasm, advocacy, and commitment to help our city to advance its performance on that important measure of diversity. So thank you, Tracy. We look forward to having you help us.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes without opposition.
Item 18, communication from Mayor Summers regarding appointment to Board of Zoning Appeals.
Thank you, Mayor Summers.
I'm very pleased to announce the appointment of Michael Alexander to the Board of Zoning Appeals, a very good commissioner, moved out of the city, Zach Brown. Yeah. And we're grateful for his leadership. However, Michael Alexander also brings a professional commitment to the buildings in Lakewood, has a strong background as a planner, has worked, studied internationally, and brings all that to Lakewood. So we're grateful for his contribution.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that communication? Hearing none. All those in favor of receiving and filing say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 19, communication from Chief Malley regarding acceptance of funds from Attorney General for DARE curriculum.
Thank you, Chief Malley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear members of council, the Ohio Attorney General has notified the Lakewood Police Department of an award of $36,583.33 for the 2019-2020 school year to be used for salaries of the officers instructing the DARE curriculum. Upon fulfilling requirements of the LCO, we're notifying Lakewood City Council of this award. Very truly yours.
Thanks. Move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file? Yes, Councilman Litton.
Thank you, Mr. President. In light of, I think, just a comment from one of our potential youth council members about the DARE program, which requires much further discussion, I guess I'm curious if these funds would ever be jeopardized in the future. Should we choose a different mechanism for training or teaching our fifth graders besides the DARE program specifically? Is this for DARE, or can we be used for this purpose through something like DARE?
Yeah, I think this grant was for DARE specifically, but is funding for other instruction as well.
Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional discussion on the motion to receive and file that communication? Hearing none. All those in favor of receiving and filing, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes without objection.
Item 20, communication from Director Sylvester regarding economic development rebate for WXZ Development's Lake House Homes project.
Director Sylvester.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of council. I won't read the entire letter tonight, but what is on your docket is an economic development grant, as we discussed during the plan development rezoning for the Lake Avenue townhomes or homes project on the former Marathon gas station site on Lake Avenue. What's included in your packet is the full development agreement. And then I'd point your attention to one of the exhibits, which has essentially the summary of the entire development agreement baked in. This is very similar to some other projects that we've worked on. The funding is set up to invest in the physical infrastructure on site that brings the site into a development-ready condition and also handles the environmental remediation on site. So, Mr. Chair, we'd be happy to walk through all these details at an upcoming committee meeting, and I would recommend Housing Committee if you guys were open to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication, and I would just note in doing so that I'm moving to receive and file on account of the fact that there is a following resolution with respect to this communication, which will refer to Housing, yes, or otherwise the appropriate committee.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file the communication? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 21, Resolution 909319, a resolution authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into an agreement with WXZ Residential Group for an economic development grant issued in the form of a single rebate for a total amount not to exceed $100,000 in order to assist the grantee in preparing the site for residential development.
Move to refer to Housing.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to refer to Housing? There being none, all those in favor of the motion to refer say aye. Aye. All those opposed? There being none, that motion passes.
Item 22, liquor permit notice regarding Hacienda Tapatia at 1572 West 117th.
Thank you. I believe we are in receipt of a report on this particular establishment. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is the new occupant of the former El Torito. And as is our tradition, I'll defer to the councilman in whose ward this establishment lies, and that is Councilman O'Malley.
Thanks. This is the, I have no objection. I just want to note this is the same owner as the popular Tapatia Taqueria restaurant in the Jefferson Park neighborhood of Cleveland, and thrilled that they're opening a new location in Lakewood. Thank you.
Thank you. I will echo, not that there's a shortage of fantastic tacos in Lakewood, but having visited the other location you referenced there, I will personally vouch that it's delicious.
Always room for more.
Yes. Any additional, I'm sorry, I should say I will move to file without objection.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to file without objection? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? There being none, that motion passes. And that brings us to the end of our docket this evening. We have several folks signed up for public comment, and the first of those folks is Faye Olson.
Hello again, Faye Olson, live on Clifton Boulevard, and I know you all have a lot of things on your docket, my gosh, solar panels and trees and everything, and I come with my small potatoes here, but it's a loss of freedom, and I'm here to talk about the ban on retractable leashes. And I'll just refresh your memory of how I got to your meetings. It was one day in March when I was coming down my driveway, and our animal warden was parked in front of my house and told me I was breaking the law. Now, these are words I've never heard in all my 80 years, plus years, and I never expected to hear. Because, you know, we should have a freedom to choose the leash that's appropriate to our dog. I don't say all big dogs and everything should be this, but choose the one that's appropriate for our dog. Because the retractable leash was invented by Mary Delaney in 1908. It's been in successful use for 111 years. So I understand from Mr. Rader and Mr. Mayor Summers that in October will be the year anniversary of this ban. So you'll have the ability then to lift the ban, which I hope you do. And really, I'm looking forward to coming to those meetings. Can you tell me which meeting it will be, the first Monday of October or the third? Does anybody know when these laws will be revisited? No?
I'm not sure that there's a committee meeting scheduled at this time to take that back up.
Okay, I understand. Well, I'll be here for all of them then. So the thing is, in October 10th will be my 88th birthday. I hope for good results from this. So I do wish you're not going to send me to Rocky River to walk my dogs or any other suburb where it's legal to do it. And we seem to be the only one that seems to have little laws for every part of our life. We're out brothering Big Brother. Let's go home and hope the Browns win.
Thank you. Our next public comment signed up is Phyllis Dutton. Dutton.
Hi, my name is Phyllis Dutton. I live on Matthews in Lakewood. I'm here to also talk in regards to the leash law. I just think that it should also be revisited as far as the restrictions go, because those of us that have small dogs, I don't think it's fair to assume that a 6-foot leash is going to be any different than a retractable leash as far as certain dogs go. And as far as having control, I think that involves the person behind the leash. You know, some people have better control with a retractable, some with, you know, just a 6-foot leather leash. So I just hope that maybe there can be some change as far as what the guidelines are and the laws regarding it. Maybe a weight restriction put on it, that dogs above a certain, you know, pound should have to have a 6-foot leash. The smaller dogs being allowed a retractable. So, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the comments, and I won't rehash the many lengthy discussions that council had regarding this topic when we made the decision, I believe unanimously, to institute this particular provision. But I will say that I do appreciate the concerns that have been voiced tonight. I think, though, that council, again, was very careful in its considerations of what the data shows regarding retractable leashes and the potential harm that they can cause not only to the person using the retractable leash, the animal, regardless of size, that's on the end of that retractable leash and might get strangulated or otherwise injured by it. And not only that, but I would say that even with respect to, you know, the argument that lighter dogs are not going to break away and attack someone the way that a heavier dog would, unfortunately, what we also see is that lighter dogs end up with too much lead and they get attacked by heavier dogs because they're not close enough in that the owner can bring them back in time that the heavier dog, unfortunately, has already done the damage. So I think that there are, again, just a lot of aspects to this question, and I think that council was not oblivious to this issue and did not make a decision lightly on this issue. I think that there were a lot of considerations made with respect to this particular issue. And I also would say that, you know, this is also an issue, as I've referenced before, that a lot of the feedback that I've heard is not from dog owners necessarily with respect to retractable leashes, but in addition from pedestrians and cyclists and other folks who are out on our sidewalks. And even if the dog is a small dog, it doesn't prevent the fact that they might trip a runner or chase after a small child or in other ways create the same issues that a large dog would. So again, I do appreciate the points that have been made tonight. You know, if council collectively is of a mind to take up these discussions again, I'd, you know, be happy to partake in that, obviously. But, you know, from my own standpoint, I do think that a lot of thought and expert recommendation went into the enactment of the holistic approach that we took to trying to make dog safety better in our community, and I think that sums it up. For
Larry,
myself.
if I could add a comment.
Yes, Mayor Summers.
We appreciate the enthusiasm and exuberance of Mrs. Olson, and we're grateful for your continued advocacy for your interests. I asked Chief Malley to begin an internal review of the law. We might remember there are many, many aspects to this law: nuisance dogs, dangerous dogs, vicious dogs, education requirements, dog bite issues. All those are key components of a thorough review, and probably even more compelling than even the leash aspect, which we did. There are also considerations about tethering and weather-related issues, many, many aspects that are appropriate for us to reconsider, or as we understand, our full year of experience. So Chief Malley oversees our animal control officers, and will begin that review. Data will be collected. We'll have internal discussions to understand what that data means, and when we have a coherent understanding, we look forward to sharing that with City Council. But honestly, in answer to Mrs. Olson's view, the experience is a year old. There's nothing mandatory that says we do this. Common sense says that when we take such broad sweeping action, we should always look and see how well we did. That takes time and thoughtfulness, and I know that internally we're going to do that, and I speak on behalf of, I know my fellow elected officials, that we take this job seriously. So, but it won't likely be in October, perhaps, or November. Budgets are very compelling issues for this council, and I'm hoping that they spend their energy on that issue as well as many others. But there is no deadline, but there is a thoughtful review that should and will happen. So we look forward to staying in touch. And I would encourage you to stay in touch with me. I'll be glad to share the information as we grow to get it.
I just wanted to say one other thing too, because why don't find the person, don't find the leash. I mean, free Jack Crafter, your animal warden, to go after loose dogs, people that are not walking their dogs responsibly, be out of control, have them go to the dogs that are being abused, free them to do the things that are important and not to go over little old ladies with 6-pound dogs.
Mr. President.
Yes, Vice President Anderson.
It's under, I'm under the impression, and this question is to the administration, primarily the police chief, that no citations have been issued to any dog owner for, right now, inappropriate use of leashes. Have any citations been issued at all?
Mr. President, as far as I know, there have been no citations, no arrests for the leash law. Basically, it's been education, just advising people about what the law is and asking them to comply.
Thank you.
But nobody's been arrested.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Our next speaker signed up is Devin, I believe it's Beatty. Thank you.
You're welcome. Originally, my tie-in was going to be the tree advisory group, but I think it works just as well with the firefighter story that Tom Bullock brought up with the diesel and the turnout gear, I think. It's an issue in a way that's traffic-related air pollution. Internal combustion engines produce over 40 pollutants. Many are carcinogenic. And for whatever reasons, lawn equipment is gallon per gallon about 11 times worse than a car. So one of my interests is in moving Lakewood towards adopting no-mow lawns, lawns that don't require chemical inputs of fertilizers or pesticides that can run off or be tracked into our houses and our shoes, where they build up on carpets and expose children to the same sort of, environmental health risks. I've been thinking about this issue for about a year and the potential barriers. Most of the time when I see no-mow yards in Lakewood, they seem to be the product of people who have a deep love of gardening, who have means, who have design abilities. But we don't really have to do that. It could be as simple as like clover in place of turf grass. There's crazy statistics about turf grass. We use in this country 1.2 billion gallons of gas annually maintaining our yards, 90 million gallons of herbicides, 78 million gallons of pesticides, 70 million gallons of fertilizer. We spill 17 million gallons of gas annually just refueling our lawn equipment. So it's really a much bigger issue than I think people might think. Excess nitrogen in the soil is processed by microbes into nitrous oxide, which is a greenhouse gas 300 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So as I thought about barriers to getting people to switch over, one of my thoughts was that perhaps we could use the tree lawns as opposed to entire front lawns and move towards ground covers that are evergreen and tolerant of being stepped on, that we could push our rolly carts for trash and recycling on. I have an east-facing house. I've been assured by the people at Petiti's that such ground covers would be appropriate for my house. I know stormwater runoff is a big issue for Lakewood. I looked for academic literature on the subject. I don't know how it would affect stormwater, but I assume most ground covers have deeper roots, and that would increase the water holding capacity of the soil because it opens up pockets for it. I think this is a nature-based solution to a problem that is only going to become more and more clear as we have more lawsuits against groups like Monsanto. So anyway, back to the tree lawn. I used GIS. It's a geographical information system to calculate the percentage of yards on my block, front yards versus the tree lawn. And it turned out, thanks to the corner lots, about 40% of front lawns were tree lawn. Some of these are only about 3 feet thick, but they run the entire length of the side of the house, the lot. So I was hoping that I could convince you to not only take a look at what we can do to expand the tree canopy, but also take a look at what we could do to encourage people to adopt no-mow lawns. I think it'd be great socially. We could have, plant exchanges where, part of the farmer's market would be, dividing our plants and trading things, It just seems like we could be more in touch with our neighbors. There's really no downside. It would be better for pollinators. I don't know. I guess that's about it. But I did take some pictures while I was out walking my dogs. All the lawns in Lakewood. And like I said, all the examples seem to be beautiful yards, but maybe not what we could expect the average person to do. So maybe what we need. I know my plan is to do bugleweed, I believe it's called, next year, which is just a very simple kind of ground cover. But thank you.
Thank you. I think that, again, my personal reaction to that is that I think that there's always room to look at our code and figure out ways that we can update it. And I think particularly in the sustainability realm, there's a number of issues that we might look at in terms of how to make our code not just accepting, but friendlier to some of the options that are before us as far as making our own properties residentially more sustainable. And I would, echo the interest in taking that on. So, yes, Councilman Bullock.
I want to say thank you, Mr. Batty, for presenting that. That was very thoughtful, and I enjoyed all the research, and there was a lot of food for thought. And when I think we had an email exchange to invite you to come present to this council meeting, I expected, I'm not sure what, but you exceeded the expectation that I had. So I appreciate the thoughtfulness and the creativity, and also the potentially measured approach of beginning with tree lawns or sections of tree lawns and seeing how the experience goes and building from there. So to me, it's worth our consideration, and I'm informed myself as to what our yard maintenance requirements allow and don't allow, although obviously we have homes in Lakewood with manicured flowers and so forth, but I think it's worth exploring. I'll also note that I always appreciate neighbors who have electric or push mowers because they're less noisy and a lot less smelly. So there's that, but it was great statistics that you shared. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I think, there's a lot of areas within our code that are worthy of examination here, whether it's rain barrels, whether it's solar on roofs, whether it's, a no-mow lawn situation, and not only, the lawn requirements directly, but frankly also our nuisance ordinances with respect to lawn maintenance would probably have to be considered as well in that context. So I think it's, again, a really important topic and one that we shouldn't give short shrift to in terms of acknowledging that there's a lot of different implications for the residential property owner in Lakewood and a lot of opportunities to explore those. Any additional comment?
Very quickly, Mr.
Yes,
President.
Councilman O'Malley.
Are these all in Lakewood?
Yes.
Do you have them digitally? Would you be able to email them to us? Thanks.
Thanks. One of those I recognize is Summit and Clifton, I believe. But anyway, Councilman Rader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, thank you so much for coming and sharing. It was very enlightening. If you wouldn't mind sharing some of that research, you probably sent some emails to us before, but all that, put it in an email, send it to us. I'd love to do more research. This is sort of a new topic to us, but we do have a phenomenal forestry department. I'd love to entertain this discussion further, but let me see what you got, and then we'll see what's next.
Thank you. Any additional comment from council? Hearing none. Our next speaker signed up is Frank Conway. Oh, they left, unfortunately. Well, for what it's worth, the subject says thank you, so there's that. All right, well, that brings us to the end of public comment then, and thus to the end of our meeting. I'll turn the floor over to the administration for any announcements. Okay. Any announcements from council members? Councilman Bullock, Councilman Litton.
Thank you, Mr. President. We do have an event tomorrow at 5:30 to 7:30 at Winterhurst Serpentini Ice Rink. That is an electric vehicle car show that actually the administration is, and Director Beno, we appreciate your support in getting that space set up. It's a co-sponsor, so is the Lakewood Chamber of Commerce, a co-sponsor. I just got a attendance update. There currently are 21 different vehicles registered and 58 registered attendees. That's a strong turnout. We'll probably get even more than that in person. That's built on the attendance we've had over the years. And this is going to be located at the new DC fast charger, the publicly owned, free to use, at least for now, charging station that's accessible off of I-90, which the administration put some excellent analysis into choosing that location. So we hope that all of these users will share by word of mouth that Lakewood's got this great facility to use and that our community is ahead of the curve. And the Chamber's interested in understanding what electric vehicle driving customers and employees want and need as this emerging technology is showing up everywhere. And then I finally have two anecdotes. A contractor I know in town just texted me the other day, I got a Chevy Bolt. Last guy in the world that I expected, drives an F-250 normally. He's got a Chevy Bolt now. He's pumped up. Then one of our longtime stalwart business owners texted me today, George Guntis of Mars Bar got a Tesla, and he wants to explore putting in a supercharger behind his business to see if that's feasible. So, and he said, we have to be leaders and not followers, and Lakewood should step up and support this citywide. So I think people are getting there, and let's keep up with them. Thanks. And please join us tomorrow. What time? 5:30 to 7:30 in the northern end of the Winterhurst parking lot.
Thank you. For myself, I would just add that for those who were able to make it up to the Lakewood Community Festival, it was, as always, a wonderful time. The stuffed cabbage was as stuffing as ever. And also, as we sentimentally acknowledged Chief Gilman's last meeting with us most recently, I want to acknowledge for those, it's been tangentially referenced, but Chief Gilman looks a little bit different tonight, and of course that's because we're joined by our new interim Chief Dunphy, and I just want to acknowledge that although you didn't have any docket items today necessarily, great first meeting, and looking forward to keeping up working with you. So that's all I've got. I'm sorry, Councilman Litton.
No problem. I just wanted to recognize Ward 3 has the distinction of having 2 high schools in it. I have 2 sons who attend one of them, and both of those high schools had threats in the past few days, or potential threats, let's say. And I just want to thank Chief Malley and his entire crew for following protocol, doing everything necessary to make people informed and as safe as possible, and nip things in the bud, frankly. So thank you.
Thank you. Any additional announcements from council? There being, yes, 6-0 Browns as the most recent update. Thank you, Councilman. There being no additional announcements, I should say, and no further business before council, move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.